Hi, this is International Master Adam Hunt with my game of the day for round 5 of the British Chess Championships in Torquay. The game in question was played by Grandmaster Simon Williams against IM International Master Ravi Haria, who up to this point was having an excellent tournament. I'll take you through the game. I'll show you the pairings for the round 6 matches, which are this afternoon, and I hope you enjoy the video. Okay, so the game started relatively quietly. d4, e6, knight f3, knight f6, e3, d5. So this is the Colli-Zukertort system, and white chooses, as I mentioned, a fairly patient and quiet approach, but this type of system also does contain some poison. Basically white's main plan, if I go back to the position, is to play b3, bishop b7, and control this e5 square, control this pawn break here. And you can see that black can actually do the same, so I jump to move there. So bishop d6, castles, castles, b3, b6. And Simon immediately jumps in with his knight to e5. It doesn't really alter things too much if he starts with bishop b2. So knight e5, bishop b2, bishop b7, sorry, bishop b2, and Ravi here plays knight b to d7. Now the problem that black has in this system is that basically white's just a tempo up. So, and unless you know a really good way to kind of diffuse white's very simple plan, which is to play for a kingside attack, something like knight d2 to f3 or f4, then he can find himself without too much counterplay, and that kind of happened in this game. So knight d7 obviously looks like a very sensible move. Knight d2, and now Ravi chose a plan which probably is a little bit is probably okay. Danny Gormally in the commentary mentioned that there's nothing wrong really in this position with just taking the same approach, playing knight e4, maybe exchanging some pieces, as in the game Rachmanov versus Timofeyev. The position isn't the most exciting in the world for sure. So, but it's a slightly dull way to play. So queen e7 was played. Simon chose an aggressive option, which is very much in keeping with his style. So he played queen f3. So I mentioned the knight might come to f3, but firstly, if this queen swings over to h3, then the pawn on h7 might become a target. Bishop a3, queen a3, and queen h3. So, as I mentioned, I'm not 100% sure, but Ravi's plan with exchanging off the dark square bishop seems a little bit suspicious to me, simply because he's now drawn his queen away, and as we'll see in the game, that queen will more than likely have to come back to try and help out with defense of the king. Of course, in this position here, if black does nothing, let's say, I don't know, something careless like rook c8, then white will simply chop, and mate on h7. So black is probably going to have to push either g6 as happened in the game, or h6. I think if he plays h6, Simon would probably carry on in a similar sort of fashion with f4, prepare maybe to either bring the rook up and across, or simply to build more pressure with the knight coming to f3. And it's not so silly to suggest the idea of g4, g5 as well. Now there's a hook on h6. So Ravi played g6, Simon played f4, and this has all been played before, as you can see, but not at a kind of British Championship level. And Ravi decided in this position to bring his queen back. We were discussing in the commentary actually the move c5, which looks very natural, I suppose. It's the only pawn break that black has in the position. But after knight f3, cd4, as we can see in this particular game, white is basically enjoying himself quite a lot on the king side. I think in the commentary room Simon wondered about something like this, with a potential idea of, if let's say something like h6, we might be able to sacrifice a piece, or we probably can sacrifice a piece. I'm not 100% sure how we should do it, but certainly knight takes e6 looks quite tempting, and then maybe take on g6, getting 2 pawns for the piece, and the king is a little bit open. So back to our game. Ravi played queen e7. Simon continues to build with knight df3, and we can just, if we just compare the bishops, we'll see that that's, I guess, the major problem with what's going on here for black. And one of the major problems is that it's very, very difficult to compare those two pieces. You know, the bishop on d3 is just sitting on such a better square. Ravi decided to take on e5, perhaps because there's not a great deal else to do as much as anything. So knight e5, f e5. There might be an argument for taking with the d pawn and trying to push the f pawn, but taking with the f pawn looks so natural because it opens the f file for the rook. And Ravi in this position, and I'm sure he didn't want to play knight d7. I'm sure he would want to play knight e4, but probably after knight e4 there's a tactical problem with that. Something like perhaps bishop e4, de4, and knight d2. And this pawn on e4 is going to become quite hard to defend. For example, I might have something like rook f4 with two ideas in mind, or I might simply play queen g4 and try and pick it off like that. Sorry. Perhaps it should have been played, because after knight to d7, Simon comes up with a very, very good move here. So always when we're playing chess, in order to improve, we can think about our opponent's plans, what they want to do, and see if we can find a sensible way to stop them. And Simon comes up with this move queen to g3, which on the surface maybe doesn't look all that impressive, but it's got a nice idea in its mind, which is that Ravi wants to break with f6. He's got to do something about this pawn on e5, and he would like to take that pawn back with his rook if he can, because it maintains defense of g6 and it keeps an eye on the e5 square to stop the knight jumping in. But now if ef6, rook f6, we can see that the pawn on c7 hangs, and that's a complete disaster for black, because now the bishop is in huge trouble as well. So f6, ef6, knight f6 is now forced if he chooses the f6 route, which he did. Knight e5, thinking possibly about a sacrifice on g6 at some stage. Queen g7, queen h3, and rook e8 to guard the pawn. We wondered in the commentary about maybe something like bishop to b5, pushing the rook up and therefore disconnecting the two rooks. That's probably quite a good move, but actually Simon just chooses a much simpler plan of rook f2, because even if Ravi tries to swap some pieces off with something like knight here, we can probably just, well, we could do one of two things. We could play rook f1, just doubling on the f file, or we could also take on f8 first, because I can't take with my rook because e6 hangs. Got to therefore take with probably, oops, sorry, I'll just show that. If he takes with his king, then rook f1 check, king here, and probably something like rook f7. Looks extremely unpleasant, but probably just winning. So bishop c8 was played, and Simon continues his plan of doubling the rooks, and knight h5 is now possible because the pawn on e6 is guarded. But after g4, rook f2, knight f6, g5, knight h5, the knight can't really go anywhere else, I don't think. It's got to stay blocking the h file. then Simon just plays very, very simply, plays bishop e2 going after the knight. Probably this move is also possible. I guess Simon is a little bit concerned about queen f7, knight f7, king f7, and it might be quite hard to break down black's defense. So knight h5, bishop e2, and we can see the knight now is trapped, so we're just simply going to take it. Rook f8, bishop h5, gh5, queen h5, and the problem for Ravi persists in the sense that his bishop on c8 is still just much worse than Simon's knight on e5. So not only is he a pawn down, but he's also got a very bad minor piece. Bishop a6 tries to improve it. Queen g4 hits the e6 pawn. Rook f2, king f2, queen f8 check. And now Simon just has to be careful. Of course, if he runs and is very careless, and that's extremely stupid and allows mate in 1, he could probably go king g3 and be quite happy, but he just chose actually just to offer the trade of the queens, because any endgame, let's say queen takes f3, king takes f3, any endgame here is really hopeless. We'll just put our king here, we'll start pushing our kingside pawn majority, eventually maybe create a passed pawn, and the knight of course still dominates the bishop on a6. So queen e8, queen f6, Simon starts to think about idea of knight g4 to h6, which is a very unpleasant threat. Queen h5, trying desperately to get some counterplay, but it doesn't unfortunately work, because after queen takes pawn, king f8, knight d7 check, king g7, mate is forced now, queen f6 check, king g8, queen f8 mate was played on the board, so it must probably have been quite satisfying for Simon to actually finish with the mate itself. So a nice game by Simon. He's got himself up to 4 points out of 5 now, after an early loss in round 2. So he's starting to build up a little bit of a head of steam. So we'll see what happens in the coming rounds. I wanted to show you the pairings for round 6 of the British Championships as well, which are up on your screen. Sorry, those are the results of round 5. So you can see in round 5 that actually now Michael Adams is leading on his own with 4.5. Justin Tan made a heroic save against David Howe from a really tough looking position. Simon, as we've just seen, beat Ravi, and on board 4 there was a really interesting king and pawn endgame between Richard Pert and David Eggleston, which eventually finished in a draw. Now, can I get round 6 up? That's the next thing. Just see if I can do that. Pairings. Yeah, I'll get the pairings up. So this is the pairings for round 6. You can see Justin's got a double white against the other favourite for the tournament, Michael Adams. Got Wadsworth versus Howell. Gordon has got the upfloat to play Simon Williams. Haria Pert, Eggleston Palliser, Nick Pert versus Katerina Toma, who is won a nice game yesterday against Grandmaster Keith Arkle. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I hope either maybe to see you later online for the commentary, or to see you perhaps tomorrow for another game of the day.